I didn't think it was possible, but the reckless Ben $200,000 Lego scandal, it just got crazier after hours of police body cam footage just got leaked, though there's also something people are missing. The shocking Candace Owens, Laura Loomer, Russia meltdown just went nuclear as MAGA's tearing itself apart over Moscow, and why this priest got removed after his UFO demons claim. We're talking about all of that and even more on today's brand new Philip DeFranco show. You daily dive into the news, so buckle up, hit that like button, and let's just jump into it, starting with this. This is genuinely crazy. The unredacted police body cam video from the reckless Ben $200,000 Lego scandal that's been spiraling out of control, it is now out there in the world. So I will say right now, it's unclear if it actually leaked or if the police accidentally released it themselves. But quick recap that you can watch my previous coverage in the video links down below. Basically, there's a guy from Oregon by the name of Brian Manziel who entered into a consignment agreement with the local Bricks and Minifigs franchise to sell his dad's $200,000 Lego collection for a 65% cut. But after corporate seized that franchise and sold it to new owners, the remaining Legos just disappeared, with Brian claiming that the company and/or its new owners stole the Legos and refused to honor the consignment deal. And that is where Reckless Ben comes in, right? The YouTuber launching a full-scale investigation that took him to Utah so he could serve papers to the new franchise owners live, but things have then quickly spiraled out of control. Ben was arrested twice on accusations of stalking one of the owners, his Airbnb was raided for the missing Legos, his car was searched for heroin, and he eventually fled to Mexico. And you've got Ben saying that a lot of this feels like a big conspiracy between the new franchise owners and the American Fork Police Department in Utah because the owners are Mormon and the cops are also part of the Mormon community. And last week, you had the AFPD posting a video statement sharing their side and effectively denying any kind of collusion. But you then had Ben hitting back at their version of events and calling on them to release all unredacted body cam footage from the case. And it now appears that we've gotten that unredacted footage, or at least some of it, though I will say it's also unclear exactly where it came from. On one side, you have Ben posting a video today where he made these claims about the origins and content.
Someone actually hacked into the American Fork Police Department and released all the footage unredacted of my interactions with them. Sadly, they weren't able to get the first 2 days where I was accused of having heroin on me. But the final 2 days, we were able to see a lot, actually.
But then you also have a number of people on Reddit who seem to have evidence that the footage may not have actually been leaked in a hack. Or when the AFPD posted their video last week, they included a link to a Dropbox that contained body cam footage. And while as of recording, that Dropbox appears to be temporarily disabled when you click the link, and so we don't really know exactly what footage was in there and whether or not it was redacted, multiple people appear to have been able to download the full contents of the folder and re-upload it on other platforms. And a number of people on Reddit who downloaded or viewed the Dropbox before it was disabled say that it did indeed appear to contain at least some unredacted footage. So of course, we can't verify that, but looking over what appears to be the most comprehensive re-upload, there are just hours and hours of body cam footage, where there are a total of 56 videos that range from a few minutes to more than 2 hours. And the videos, they span from March 8th to March 11th, meaning that they do actually appear to include the first 2 days of footage that Ben said were left out. And we were also able to find body cam video from when the police searched his car for drugs. But again, it is unclear how much of this is truly unredacted, especially since large chunks of these videos appear to be muted. But there, you have a lot of people claiming that those blank audio spots are actually the police manually muting their own body cams, which they generally are allowed to do in certain circumstances that involve privacy or highly sensitive matters. Now, of course, given what we try to do on the show, we're not gonna be able to go through all this video because there's just so much footage, but you had Ben flagging specific clips in the update that he posted today. Right, and the footage that he selected to show it hits on kind of the core dispute. One of the biggest disputes in Utah, it centers around Ben's efforts to serve legal documents to a man by the name of Josh Johnson, who's one of the new owners of the Bricks and Minifigs franchise in Oregon. Ben says that he can't move forward with his lawsuit until he gets Josh to sign the documents. So he calls him, he goes to his house, he sends others to his house, and he has no success. Instead, he gets arrested for trespassing and stalking. But early on in his attempts, police offered to give Josh the papers, but Josh kept claiming, hey, those papers are fake, and the cops didn't end up serving the documents even after they verified that they were legitimate. And while that's stuff that we already knew, Ben then plays a clip of the body cam footage that he says shows how easily the cops just gave up when they could have just served Josh.
I've talked to the Kaiser Police Department. There's nothing filed. So no, I'm not accepting service from them. Okay. Absolutely not. It's fake.
Okay.
It's not real.
That's completely fine. You have that right.
Yeah.
Literally, all this police officer has to do is be like, "You are served," and then he doesn't even have to accept them. He can literally just drop them. But as long as you say you are served, that counts as illegal serving. So why doesn't this cop just do that? Like this whole thing could be solved in literally 3 seconds. Like here, I'll time it. You've been served.
Then there was also this moment that Ben claims just further illustrates how the cops were working to help Josh.
What are you wanting done today? Besides, obviously, talk to...
As much as you humanly possibly can.
I can screen charges. I'm open to screening charges through our attorney.
Yeah. Instead of serving these court papers, like the police officer promised me he would, this officer would rather screen all possible charges for me to see what random stuff they can make up about me.
There were also at least 2 moments where Josh told the police that Ben sent another person to threaten him with murder.
He's hired this YouTuber His name is Ben Schneider. He's Reckless Ben. They sent people in saying they're going to murder our manager. They sent a lady in, and the lady's like, "Oh, I'm going to murder you," to Amanda, the manager.
And now Josh has just committed a felony. Lying to the police officers about a false threat I made to get me arrested is super duper illegal.
And that murder claim was actually also echoed by the CEO of Bricks and Minifigs, Amon McNabb, who was on the speakerphone with Josh during one of the times police went to his house.
What's happened is we had a former franchisee, Mr. Schneider is just a YouTuber that got a hold of the story and then went to this guy and said, "Hey, if I can harass these guys and if I can do some stuff and get some money out of them, will you pay me some of that money?" And that's what they're trying to do, is the individual who actually owes the money left the United States.
And now Eamon has just committed obstruction by lying to the police officers.
He created a fake contract, forged a manager's signature up there, threatened to kill her.
I actually want to play some more of that call for you that Ben didn't include because the accusations McNeff makes are pretty wild. Right, during the lengthy phone call, McNeff says that the original franchise owner who made the consignment deal with Brian Mansell sold the entire 200K Lego collection and then fled to Europe without compensating him. So McNeff appears to be claiming that he's been trying to help Brian, but this whole thing's just a scheme that Ben cooked up with Brian so they can both extort money from Bricks and Minifigs. And he also accuses Ben of harassing staff at their private homes, creating fraudulent documents, and forging signatures. And very notably here, McNeff also told AFPD that his lawyers were working with law enforcement in Oregon, and said that there is already another open case against Ben in Utah that lays out all those allegations.
We had a former franchisee that entered into an invalid consignment agreement with a completely separate person. That person sold their Lego sets and didn't pay the person. They then fled to Europe somewhere. And so we've been trying to deal with this situation. We've been trying to help the person up in Oregon. They started flying down here, coming to our corporate offices, and now they're heading to our staff and other individuals' personal residences to just harass and continue to try and extort money out of them. And so there's already a case in Provo because they've been passing fraudulent documents up in Oregon. So yeah, and like, again, there's additional fraud that they're conducting. I don't know, like, obviously we're working with the police up in Salem, Oregon, but up there, they actually forged somebody's signature on a fake contract just to try and, like, and it's all just for clicks and for views and everything else online. They don't actually care about any of the things that they're going after. They just, well, other than also the extortion.
And while Ben didn't include those clips in his most recent video, he did kind of touch on the broader allegations.
So right away, Josh is lying to the police, which we can easily verify with all of the metadata timestamped pictures that show that the Lego sets were in the store when Josh took it over. So this is basically a spoiler for episode 3, but basically this Bricks and Minifigs company has nonstop been making fake bomb threats, fake fire threats, fake murder threats in my name that I'm going to murder them. The only problem is obviously these are all fake threats. I would never do something like that. But the police think that these are real threats. So now the police from Los Angeles, from Utah, they're all working together now to catch me.
With them going on to play a clip of a phone call between Utah and California police where they discuss the cases and wonder about Ben's whereabouts. And you've got Ben arguing that the clips show that the police are scheming together to get him arrested for fake threats. So there you've had some countering saying it just kind of seems like they're doing more normal cop stuff, right? Asking about shared details of the various cases and asking each other if they know where Ben is. But regardless, there you've Ben ending the video saying that he's in a place right now where the American police do not have jurisdiction, so they can't catch him. And so that is generally where we are right now. Though again, I do want to stress there are hours and hours of police footage to sort through, so we may see other things pop up. And that's all while as we're getting these constant updates on this just increasingly insane story, you've got Ben promising a part 3 video. So yeah, 1, who knew a story about Legos could get to this place? And 2, while we wait to see what happens next, I'd really love to know your thoughts, opinions, and reactions in those comments down below. But then also, while you've got Ben waiting for whatever is coming next from the cops or Bricks and Minifigs or whatever, we should then also talk about how one of the most loyal bootlickers for Donald Trump, a personal advisor to the president who has been called the MAGA whisperer, just admitted that the Democrats, they were right all along, with Laura Loomer declaring, "The more I observe, the more I realize the left wasn't so wrong about their claims that many personalities on the fringe of the so-called right are foreign agents." Broken clocks and all, and then adding, "This week, it hit me hard just how much Russian propaganda we have been subjected to on the right for the last 5 years." And adding, "It's a shame so many false accusations of Russian collusion were spread over the last 10 years as a way to smear Donald Trump and his allies with lies, because now that actual Russian interference is here in our media and on social media, nobody believes it's real." Now, 1, this is funny to me me because there's always been talk about how you can kind of puppet Laura Loomer to say what you want if you throw some bucks at her. But also, too, you might be confused. Is she talking about Tucker Carlson, Tim Pool, Benny Johnson? We could list so many different people. Is it Dave Rubin, who just got absolutely crushed on Jubilee? No, well, actually, it turns out this time it's Candace Owens.
I was in Moscow, and Moscow was positively stunning. It defied, I didn't really have any expectations, but if I had any, they would have been defied by just how clean, how safe, how beautiful, how historic the city is. I wish I had spent more time, to be honest with you. I was asking myself, why? Like, why can't we be told that this is a lovely, beautiful, safe city? Especially as a Christian, I think that frustration is magnified because there's so much wonderful Christian heritage in Moscow, and it's beautiful.
So yeah, that's right. Candace appears to be in Russia with her husband, George Farmer, and their 4 kids, taking in the sights, touring the Kremlin grounds, doing her best to awaken the Christian world to what Satanists did to the Romanov family. And hey, you know, it could be argued there's nothing wrong with admiring the aesthetic beauty and cultural history of a place like Russia, its brutal regime notwithstanding. Granted, it is a little ironic that Owens, who's a Catholic, is supposedly there to see the Christian heritage when Russia severely restricts the church there and has outright banned the Ukrainian Catholic Church and occupied Ukraine, persecuted its priests, and imposed its brand of Orthodox Christianity there. But even putting that aside, Owens isn't just there to see the cathedrals, despite how she's depicting the trip. She's speaking at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, or SPEEF, which is a fun thing to say, and also a Kremlin-backed conference that's been dubbed Russia's Davos. Or with Davos being the better-known summit in the Swiss Alps, where you have global elites gathering every year, except this one is pro-Russian, anti-woke, apparently, and it's been held since 1997. And so in attendance, you have Vladimir Putin himself, his state philosopher, Alexander Dugin, some sanctioned oligarchs, and oddly enough, Trump's architectural advisor, Rodney Mims Cook Jr., among others. And you may have also seen some pointing out that the Tate brothers appear to be in Russia this week, though I will say it's unclear right now whether they're attending the event as well. But as far as Candace Owens, she ended up sitting on a panel titled Big Family, Big Reach, New Demographics and Narratives for Media Managers that focused on promoting having lots of kids.
It really has been a blessing to hear about, I guess, to hear more intimately about what's going on in Russia in terms of those policies that are being put into place to encourage big families.
Right, and of course, having lots of kids in Russia, very important because, you know, you never know when Putin's going to want to throw them into the wood chipper for another war of choice. But also, as far as the other people on the panel, that included a Russian politician sanctioned by the United States for running a program which kidnapped Ukrainian kids and trafficked them to Russia for re-education, as well as a TV presenter sanctioned by the EU for spreading propaganda. But with all this, I should note, especially if you're not like super familiar with Candace Owens, this is not out of character. She's been a huge Russia-phile since at least 2024, with her saying back then, "No amount of media brainwash in the world could ever make me hope that Zelensky triumphs over an Orthodox Russia. Spiritually, I just know that's wrong. You simply do not support a homosexual actor that is locking up churches and bishops." Candace Owens is also not the first right-wing American podcaster to visit the motherland, right? You had Steve Bannon and Tucker Carlson being 2 other examples.
There's no graffiti, there's no filth, there are no foul smells, there are no bums or drug addicts or rapists or people waiting to push you onto the train tracks and kill you. No, it's perfectly clean and orderly.
And actually, speaking of Tucker Carlson, when Owens was asked this week whether she would run for president, this was her answer.
I really don't have an interest in running for office because there is just too much inauthenticity. Also, the great letdown of Trump. I would be interested in strongly getting behind someone like Tucker Carlson, though.
But whether it's Tucker or Candace, for their enemies in this MAGA civil war that we've been seeing playing out, it's kind of all the same. They are both just paid foreign agents. And probably the loudest voice that's been making that claim right now is Laura Loomer, who wrote on Twitter, "Candace Owens is 100% in communication with sanctioned individuals. The State Department, DOJ, and U.S. Treasury really need to investigate Candace Owens." But then Owens firing back, "She is mentally unwell and unfortunately exceptionally dense as well. You genuinely have to laugh at someone who tags the State Department on X to inform them that one of their citizens is headed to Russia. This means she doesn't even grasp the function of a passport. She thinks the State Department looks to her X feed to learn who is flying in and out of their country." With then Loomer kind of wiling out, writing, "Candace Owens looks pregnant in her pics from Russia. I can see it now if she's investigated for possible FARA violations. The Trump admin is prosecuting a black pregnant woman. I need asylum. Russia. As you wish." Like I said, Candace Owens is auditioning to be the female Edward Snowden so she can avoid all accountability and live somewhere where she can spew her propaganda all day without fear of being sued or held accountable in the courts. With that, appearing to be referring to the ongoing defamation lawsuit that Owens has over her baseless claims that Emmanuel Macron's wife is secretly transgender. Which on that note, we're also seeing that Owens has begun referring to Laura as Larry, though it's unclear whether she's kind of poking fun or actually believes that Loomer is trans. But whatever the case may be, she ended up shooting back, writing, "You and your fake husband, Andrew Simpson, who is actually just your handler, look unhappy on this Alaskan cruise last week. Is it because he only travels with you alongside an entourage of the 6 young dudes that accompanied him? Are you paying for trips for him and his friends so you can pretend you are in a relationship? Also, why did you lie and claim to people people you two were married when you are not. An Alaskan cruise with his homies is about as close as you'll get to Russian vacation with family, which is what you are inherently jealous of, Larry. And then adding, calling it now, Andrew Simpson is likely getting paid to keep tabs on the mentally unstable Larry. He is simply on a job, but Larry is way too stupid to figure that out. When Trump is out of office, the job will be done. Which Loomer responded, who squeezed the turkey baster for baby number 5? Is Putin going to announce what looks like another pregnancy? Just don't let the baby drive with George in the car. You know, drunk driving kills. Right, and also as just that fantastic dumpster fire mess plays out, you have Owens also being dismissive of more mainstream outlets covering her trip as what it clearly is, a pro-Kremlin propaganda tour.
For whatever reason, I think this has been the most triggering trip for the mainstream media. Every single article that is written about me it's fiction. I don't even respond. It would have sufficed to just say, Candace is going to Russia on a family vacation, and while she's there, she's going to be speaking on the topic of family at Spieth. Yeah. They just can't do it. They fall short every single time.
And then there's even more that we gotta dive into in just a minute. But first, let me thank a sponsor and say, I think a lot of people watching this have something that they've been almost ready to launch for a while now. And not almost ready because the idea needs work, but almost ready because everything around the idea, it just feels like a job in itself. But then at some point, almost ready just becomes never. So Squarespace, it closes that gap. And no website? No problem. Today, that changes because Squarespace makes it easy to start selling content, courses, physical or digital products, whatever you've been dreaming of. Their beacon tools will literally draft your site copy, suggest your layout, and design your pages. You just describe what you want. It builds around you. No coding, no guesswork, just results. And if you want to just showcase stuff or you want one-time payments, subscriptions, you can do all of it. Beacon can help you design and build the business, and then Acuity, it handles the booking. So by the time that your first client finds you, everything's already ready for it. And once you're live, their built-in analytics and marketing tools, they keep everything running like clockwork, right? So you can focus on what you actually care about. So stop with the procrastination. Your free trial's waiting for you at squarespace.com/Phil, or just scan that QR code. Today is launch day. When it's ready to go live, just use code Phil to get 10% off and let them know we sent you. But then diving right back into the news, the House of Representatives has now voted against Trump's war against Iran, and there's a new US brokered ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon, though it's not clear either conflict's actually anywhere close to over. So let's start with the vote in the House, right? Because as we've talked about, Trump has repeatedly rejected the idea that he needs permission from Congress for this war. And the Republican Party, or at least most of their members, they've repeatedly failed to give him any reason to think otherwise. But the tide has ever so slightly been shifting, where the Senate advanced a measure demanding that Trump end the war or win authorization from Congress for the first time in mid-May with the help of 4 Republicans and all but 1 Democrat. And the House would have likely done the same if not for Republican leadership abruptly canceling the vote after it became clear that they lacked the numbers to defeat the measure. They seemed to be hoping that Trump was going to be able to end the war on his own before they had no choice but to let the vote take place. But instead, despite Trump continuing to claim that an agreement is near and even announced at one point that he was headed to the Situation Room to make a final determination on Iran, there is no end in sight. In fact, just this week, we've seen some of the most intense fighting yet since the ceasefire took effect, with, for example, Iran firing missiles and drones on bases in the region and Kuwait's international airport. They injured dozens and left at least 1 person dead. And then also, as that's been going on, we've seen Trump facing some limited pushback from his party on issues unrelated to the war, right? With, for example, some Senate Republicans forcing him to abandon his request for $1 billion in security funding for his ballroom project, as well as speaking out on his decision to appoint Bill Pulte to serve as the acting director of national intelligence. Meanwhile, bipartisan pressure on the Justice Department also led to the scrapping of the $1.8 billion so-called anti-weaponization fund, which of course looked like it was just being created to award payouts to Trump's allies and supporters, including January 6th rioters. And so the War Powers vote in the House yesterday, it's been one aspect of what's been described by some as kind of a Republican rebellion in Congress. So to be very clear, the dissenters are still few and far between. It is still widely Trump's party, though the House did vote 215 to 208 in favor of ending the war without congressional authorization. Right, only 4 Republicans joined Democrats, though included Thomas Massie of Kentucky, whose criticism of the war, of course, is just one of the reasons that Trump primaried him. But as far as this resolution that just got passed in the House, it's now going to move to the Senate, which has to take it up within roughly 2.5 weeks, according to the law. But then also, even if it passes, you have the Trump administration arguing that any effort by Congress to limit the president's war powers is unconstitutional. So any real chance of making the resolution legally enforceable, it's likely going to require a 2/3 supermajority in both chambers. And so the reality here is that this war, the disaster, all the impacts, it's still all in Trump's hands. All while he just continues to give incredibly conflicting statements about where negotiations stand. He claimed last week, for example, that Iran, they had agreed to let the US come in and remove its enriched uranium stockpile. But then a couple of days later, he told Reuters that he didn't really care because it's so far underground. And then with that, he's increasingly taken to downplaying the situation even as the stakes continue to grow. With him saying earlier this week that the talks to reach a preliminary agreement, they were starting to get very boring, his words, and adding, I don't care if they're over, honestly. I really don't care. I couldn't care less. If they're over, they're over. And you then had Trump saying yesterday that the war, which just a reminder has killed at least 13 American service members, increased the cost of living for millions of working class people in the country, and depleted military weapons stockpiles for our country to what some believe are dangerously low levels was, quote, not a big thing for the United States. And he then went on to boast about the stock market and falsely claim that costs were coming down and everybody's making a lot of money. But then also, once again, casually threatening Iran's annihilation.
We could go another 2-3 weeks and just wipe everybody out. I'd rather not do that. Very easy to do. They're ready to do it. They want to do it. They want to do it. But if we can get something down in writing which will accomplish the same thing without killing everybody, I'd like to do that.
And with all that, Trump has reportedly told aides that he'd only really consider returning to all-out war if Iran kills more American troops, with the implication being that he might be willing to accept smaller flare-ups in the fighting for weeks or even months to avoid that outcome, which would actually track with something else that he said yesterday, downplaying the recent attacks.
You know, I'd say in that part of the world, ceasefires when you're shooting in a more moderate manner. It takes two to tango. You understand that. We hit them very hard on something else, unrelated. And so they were responding.
Though with everything here, while Trump's trying to look unbothered in public, it might just kind of be for show. And I say that for a number of reasons, including on Monday, you had Axios reporting that Trump lashed out at Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu over Israel's escalation in Lebanon, reportedly saying, "What the fuck are you doing? And you're fucking crazy. You'd be in prison if it weren't for me. I'm saving your ass. Everybody hates you now. Everybody hates Israel because of this." And then Trump actually later confirmed the conversation in an interview with the New York Post, with then some reporting that actually put a stop to Israel's plan to launch massive strikes on Beirut, and now you have Israel and Lebanon saying that they've agreed to implement a full ceasefire. With that agreement reportedly reached after 2 days of negotiations mediated by Trump officials. And this is something that is very, very important to Trump, because a full ceasefire in Lebanon, it is one of the key demands that Iranian officials have made for ending the war. But also, a key thing is that Israel and Lebanon already agreed to a ceasefire weeks ago, and that one obviously hasn't worked out. Or you've got the Lebanese health ministry saying the conflict's killed more than 3,300 people since early March, and several hundred of those deaths, they were after the ceasefire took effect. And then this new ceasefire, while it demands that Hezbollah halt attacks and pull its fighters from certain areas, it doesn't explicitly require immediate concessions from Israel. And actually, since this was announced, Israel's already carried out deadly airstrikes. And you had Israel's defense minister saying that his country had, quote, freedom of action backed by the United States to strike Beirut in response to attacks on Israeli communities and territory. And then Hezbollah, for their part, they've also reportedly fired rockets at Israeli targets in the region, with the group's leader rejecting the ceasefire and calling it a, quote, roadmap to annihilate part of the Lebanese people. With that said, there were some signs that the new ceasefire was having some effect. Right, as part of the deal, both sides have agreed to create so-called pilot zones over which the Lebanese armed forces would take exclusive control to the exclusion of all non-state actors, seeming to refer to Hezbollah. And you have the Lebanese military saying today that Israeli forces had withdrawn from one area in the south to allow Lebanese army units to begin deploying there. So ultimately, we're gonna have to wait to see what happens, and you have people worried that this whole thing could just fall apart at any moment, and whatever does happen, it can also affect the US negotiations with Iran. Right, but then to switch gears up a bit, we should also talk today about this man who put his life on the line for nearly 2 decades just to lose it because his insurance carrier denied his cancer treatment. Right, so this is Ken Jones. He was a firefighter with the San Francisco Fire Department for 17 years. He met his wife there, his daughter was born while he worked there. So much of his life was spent protecting that city. Even after he stopped fighting the fires himself, he worked in the department's stress unit, helping connect his colleagues to mental health support. Except it turns out that time that he spent on the front lines, it left him with more than just a few good stories. 14 months ago, Ken was diagnosed with an advanced stage of lung cancer known as adenocarcinoma. He developed painful tumors in his bones, lymph nodes, and brain, and his doctor said that it was likely connected to his time fighting fires. Which, yeah, makes sense. I mean, even back in 2022, you had the World Health Organization starting to classify firefighting as a carcinogen, or because of the prolonged exposure to smoke and chemicals. But as far as Ken, after his diagnosis, he got started on chemo and immunotherapy, but his doctors had him stop that ahead of schedule in order to try some new medical trials. But those weren't able to slow the cancer's progression as much as they hoped. And so his medical team, including Dr. Matthew Gubens, turned back to immunotherapy with chemo at the beginning of this year. Except what happened is that Blue Shield, Ken's insurance provider through the city, denied coverage. And that's despite the fact that they even acknowledged the immunotherapy prescribed is both FDA approved and within the Medicare guidelines. But they said that both a Blue Shield oncologist and a Medicare-funded independent reviewer determined that Ken was ineligible because he had already gone through other treatments. And immunotherapy is meant to be a first-line therapy. But Dr. Gubens was very quick to push back against that.
There are gray areas and edge cases among our patients where those guidelines just don't apply, where the data aren't as robust, and we have to make clinical decisions in the clinic on the ground.
And he's not just saying that to say that. Dr. Gubens is the head of UC San Francisco's Thoracic Medical Oncology Clinic, and he reportedly helped craft the guidelines for how to best treat cancer patients. He's not a nobody, he's not just some doctor, he knows his shit. And so he decided to call Blue Shield and appeal the decision. But even after hours on the phone, he says that he couldn't get a hold of anyone who could actually do anything.
I reached people who apologized, but they weren't the right place to send the appeal to, and often referred me back to the first person I talked to.
How long were you on the phone?
That day, I spent about 3 hours calling different phone numbers for this insurance company.
So he submitted his appeal in writing, only for it to then get shot down again. And obviously, as all of this is happening, Ken and his family, they're pissed and terrified.
You just automatically depend on that insurance being there. And then when it's not, it's quite a blow.
You didn't expect any of this?
No. Expects to be taken care of.
You had his daughter Rachel adding,
who says no to somebody with stage 4 lung cancer?
You thought it was a mistake?
Yeah, I really did. To me, saying no is saying, I'm okay with you dying.
And she's kind of right. Without the insurance coverage, there wasn't much that Ken could do because the out-of-pocket expense for the treatment that he needed was roughly $50,000, and that's just for one round. In order to have a fighting chance, he'd have to repeat the treatment every 3 weeks for up to 2 years. I mean, we're talking about potentially more than $1 million. But also, they're not just going to give up and take that lying down. And so Ken's family and friends and former colleagues, they take the issue to San Francisco's Health Oversight Board. And while the board, they can't overturn a denial, they're responsible for approving all city employee health plan contracts and could pressure the insurance company to reconsider. And so you had Rachel stand up in front of that board at a public meeting earlier this year, accusing Blue Shield of putting money above her father's life.
Today I'm forced to stand here and beg because an insurance company decided that profits matter more than the life of a man who spent his career protecting this city.
But the oversight officials, they were apparently unmoved, with the executive director for the San Francisco Health Service System siding with Blue Shield and saying, at the heart of the matter is the fact that such services that were denied are not allowed by Medicare, which is also the hill that Blue Shield's dying on as well, despite the fact that Ken and his family quickly disproved that. Ken decided to leave Blue Shield and get on the standard Medicare run by the federal government, with his wife saying that after he switched, Medicare agreed to pay for Ken's immunotherapy with no issue, and adding, Ken's full treatment is now being fully covered by straight Medicare. The San Francisco Health Service System shouldn't allow Blue Shield to get away with it for Ken or other retirees. But this fight with Blue Shield, it led to a serious delay in critical care, and so you had Dr. Gubin saying,
any of our cancer treatments are harder to give and less effective the weaker a patient is when we're seeing them.
And horribly, it all proved too much, and Ken Jones recently passed away, with a former colleague and a close friend saying,
I believe wholeheartedly that they expedited his death. Chemotherapy really is tough. It's tough on your body because it's killing all the good cells as well as the bad. And so, you know, he had to suffer a lot through that. And then being denied further treatment, it's so cruel. It is so cruel.
And as far as Blue Shield, they released a statement saying it was, quote, deeply saddened to learn of Ken's passings and extended condolences to his wife, family, friends, and former colleagues, which you can take as heartfelt, or the company worried that people are going to start Googling who is the CEO and other people in the C-suite. But also, Ken's struggle has also become a catalyst for a major snowball effect in San Francisco, with government officials jumping in to ask questions as the story was gaining traction. And that including a California Assembly member summoning Blue Shield to explain their denial decision back in February, and the San Francisco supervisors even calling the situation and so much more into question in April. Right at the time, asking how widespread denials like this really are among the 40,000 city employees and retirees covered by Blue Shield and 2 other insurance providers. And it turns out, according to the city's health service system, 21% of claims are denied, which definitely raised the alarm for Supervisor Connie Chan, saying that she wants to find out whether this is a solvable administrative issue or if it's something that needs to be addressed before the city renews its contracts with Blue Shield. And with Ken's death, Blue Shield executives are expected to meet with leaders of the local firefighters union and other advocates to talk about real reform. But as far as if there is real meaningful change, we'll wait and see. I'm a cynic. I see and break down stories like this and I go, oh, everything's run by soulless bloodsuckers. But hey, maybe hell will freeze over and I'll get surprised, or the heat will actually get too hot for some people and they might do the right thing. But while we wait to see, and also to give you a little breath before our final block of today's show, let me self-promote. Right now, at least for me, it is getting hotter and hotter. And it's actually not because I've gotten too close to the dumpster fire of the news that we have to talk about every day, but rather because I go outside. And so what I've personally found to be fantastic, and I'm very biased here, are our Beautiful Bastard Core 2.0 tees that are now on sale at beautifulbastard.com. It's substantial without being heavy, it is stretched without being clingy. And in addition to looking good, it makes me feel good, especially in this weather. And in fact, I think you'll also like it so much that if you use coupon code, I'm bringing it back, feel it, you can get your first tee for just $15. So jump on it now. It is a 36-hour code. And also for those asking, yes, we're bringing back more graphic tees, I'd say in about 6 weeks. And those are actually going to be on our Core 1.0s, which a lot of people have requested that we bring back as well. So yeah, there's that, all at beautifulbastard.com. Love your faces. But then for your final block today, we've got more news you need to know that starts with cancer and HIV patients. They could lose their health care under the Trump administration's Medicaid work requirements. For months, federal officials led state Medicaid workers to believe that people who need consistent coverage for their conditions, they'd be exempt from the new requirements. But now with the interim final rule that was just published, you have experts saying the condition or the disease needs to be actively interfering with your ability to work. So people with early stage cancer who are in radiation treatment but still have the capacity to work, or people who have HIV but can still technically work, are not exempt from the work requirement. And so as the rule is written now, someone with those types of conditions, they could mess up their paperwork, miss a deadline, or just get caught in a clerical mistake and lose their coverage. And experts are saying that those types of mistakes, they are bound to happen with the time crunch here. Because while it usually takes years to make healthcare changes this big, states were only given a year and a half to make it happen. Just to give you some context on how bad this could be, about 1.2 million Americans are living with HIV. And as far as cancer, you have researchers estimating that there's going to be over 2 million new cancer diagnoses across the country this year alone. And even that, it doesn't count the millions of patients with any other chronic issues who are basically left just crossing their fingers, hoping these quick changes don't leave them in a life or death situation. But as far as the Trump administration, they're thinking as long as people aren't sitting at home reaping in Medicaid benefits, it's all worth it. And they see this as a way to encourage people to work for what they get, with Dr. Oz saying, if you're sitting at home, which is true for the millions of people who are able-bodied on Medicaid, on average, you're spending 6.1 hours watching television or just hanging around. So as a path to prosperity, Congress very wisely said, let's get you back into the workforce. There, I should mention that many adults that are on Medicaid, they're already working. Only about 1 in 5 aren't. And then also the specifics there matter, because that could be for anything from being laid off to being retired, not just because, they wanted to spend all day binging Netflix. And then even for the people who aren't retired or laid off, you have people saying, this work requirement suggests that somebody could get a job if they wanted. They just need a little shove, which just kind of reflects a complete lack of understanding of what people are actually going through. And so with all this, you've got medical groups and advocates saying they're deeply concerned, saying the rule would dramatically and inappropriately increase the number of people who will lose their healthcare coverage. And the potential consequences here, it's very real. You have the executive director of the HIV and Hepatitis Policy Institute saying, we are going to lose people to Medicaid, and then they're going to get sick, and then they're going to die. But then, going to concerning and sad, we get to very weird. And that's because the Archbishop of Washington, D.C. just removed an exorcist from his position for saying that UFO sightings are the work of demons. Right, so meet Monsignor Stephen Rossetti, a priest and psychologist who's been working with the church for decades. He's treated clergy with mental health issues, served as a chaplain. He's also a professor at Catholic University, and up until this week, he led the St. Michael Center for Spiritual Renewal, which is a nonprofit organization that hosts spiritual education workshops and trains clergy. So not some, run-of-the-mill priest, but he also then recently went on the Faith, Hope, and Love Ministry YouTube show and landed himself in some hot water.
Demons like to hide. They don't want us to know they're around. They don't want us to know what they're doing because they're more effective when we don't realize it. Demons indeed can break into the physical world, and at times they can be seen. There's no question in my mind, personally, again, this is not de fide, but it's my personal belief that probably many, if not most, of these UFO sightings are in fact demons, and they can do things that we can't do, thus the speed.
And to add some color to this, it is not uncommon for some Catholics or other religions to, challenge the idea of things like aliens.
I don't think they're aliens. I think they're demons anyway, but that's a longer discussion.
As reports have noted, in some cases, the idea is that these things diminish what some see as the unique place of human beings in God's eyes.
When I hear about sort of extra natural phenomenon, that's where I go to, is the Christian understanding. I think that one of the devil's great tricks is to convince people he never existed.
But despite how surprisingly common the alien to demon pipeline may be, after that YouTube episode aired, you had Cardinal Robert McElroy announcing that Rossetti would be removed as an exorcist, saying his statements, quote, gravely undermine the church's very precise teaching on the devil, demons, and exorcism. And then with that, you had Rossetti saying in a statement, I am saddened by the decision of the Archdiocese of Washington. I ask forgiveness for any ways that I have not been faithful to the teachings of the church's magisterium, particularly in the cited video on aliens and the demonic. With him saying he'll continue being obedient to the church, encouraged people to do the same, and said that the center would continue its work elsewhere. And then actually the final bit of news you should know about today is that Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, he is reportedly eyeing a guilty plea for retaining classified information in a deal with the DOJ that he's hoping is going to help him avoid prison time. Because last year, Bolton was accused of sharing more than 1,000 pages of diary-like stories of his work from 2018 to 2019 with two relatives who were helping him with his book that came out in 2020. This was reportedly top secret information. We're talking foreign enemy missile launch plans for U.S. covert action, serious stuff. And they said that he was sharing all this through his personal email, which was later hacked by someone officials believe was linked to Iran. And so with that, back in October, Bolton was indicted on 18 counts of mishandling classified information, which, it could have gotten him a decade behind bars if he got convicted. And while he originally pleaded not guilty, there's now a change of plea hearing set for June 26th. And reportedly, he's planning to plead guilty to the count of retention of national defense information and has agreed to pay a fine of $2.25 million. Well, with this deal, he could avoid jail time altogether. If he doesn't, he could be serving up to 5 years. That's ultimately going to be up to the judge. So ultimately, this ends up kind of being one of the first big hits that Trump's landed against his enemies in court, because apparently this case against Bolton, it's standing up a lot better than the ones that we've seen against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. But that, my friend, you beautiful bastard, is the end of your Thursday Philip DeFranco show dive into the news. What a day, and also what a week we've had together. Also remember, if you're not 100% filled in, I got you covered right here or in the link down below for another video you should watch, which is our new Crashing Out. We even had our first special guest, Bernie Sanders, join us. But whatever you do, let me just say thank you for watching, liking, subscribing. I love yo faces, and I'll see you right back here next time.
What should I ask Bernie Sanders later today?
Senator Sanders, thank you so much for meeting with me here today. So what the hell is going on? We got all this new technology. We're the richest country in the history of the world, and our younger generation is going to have a lower standard of living than their parents. That's pretty crazy.
There's no expectations of any decency or professionalism.
We can have our reach turned on and off by somebody sitting in a server room somewhere.
AI and robotics will be the most transformational technologies in the history of humanity.